Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt podcast. We've got Katy Hall with us today, representative from District 11.
Yep.
So, it's been a while since we talked.
Yeah.
So, you're kind of on fire. You're like the major
that.
mover and shaker in the legislature here lately. I mean, a lot of landmark legislation. Congratulations on that. Let's talk a little bit about you just to begin with, if that's okay.
Sure.
So, you and your husband met down at Dixie State University.
Yep.
At that time, was it Dixie College?
It was
then?
Dixie College then, yeah.
Yeah, and
32 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somehow that name change got you motivated to be in office, didn't it?
Partially, yes. Yep.
But even though that wasn't an issue in your district, right?
Yeah.
I think it offered a little motivation.
Yeah. Only because the sponsor was from my district.
That was the only real motivation. But so tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I'm a nurse. So I went to nursing school while my husband was going through medical school. And my husband's a physician. We have 4 boys and 3 daughter-in-laws and 2 grandkids now, 1 on the way due next week. So
that's cool.
We're excited about that. I never wanted to really go into politics, never thought it was in my path, but a couple of years ago,
In fact, you tried to get your husband to do it, right?
I did. I was kind of like, somebody needs to run because some things are happening that we need to push back on. And he is too busy to do it. And I had a lot of time. My last son graduated in 21. And so I was like, I have time. I can either go to work full time at the hospital or I can try this and see where it takes me. And this is where I'm at now. Yeah. So
well, it's interesting how, in fact, I think we need more people like you that just want to kind of straighten out things that are going on. That
I agree with that. I think there's a beauty in this country of a citizen legislature, of people who just want to stand up and represent their communities and listen to the people in their communities. And I felt like I had a lot of time to do that and motivation and willingness to dedicate to that when I decided to run. And so, and I feel like that's the beauty of the citizen legislature too, is that we have people from all different walks of life, right? I come from a healthcare background. The others come from a law background, others from real estate, others from, all these different walks of life. And it helps give us a more rounded, way of looking at all the things,
Well, one of the first big things was this transgender bill, right?
Yeah.
And I really appreciated the way you and Mike Kennedy took that on because I felt like you really tried to get all of the perspectives before you did that.
Yeah, we did. We met with Equality Utah and I know he had met with them several times. And when I got into the legislature, I told them, I said, I'm happy to help you with this. I have a nursing background. Some of the things that I'm seeing don't gel with me scientifically and healthcare wise with what's going on with children. If people choose to make that choice when they're older and when their brains are more developed, I totally get it. But children change their minds. I've raised 4 kids. I know how kids are. They change their minds on whims and on, what their friends are doing and all these things. And so to do permanent damage to their bodies as a nurse, I was like, I have to stand up and do something about this. So I said, I'm happy I'd love to work with you on this. I realize I'm new in the legislature, so if it doesn't gel to have me sponsor it, then don't. It's more important for me that it passes. And in the end, he decided that he wanted me to sponsor it on the House floor. And so that was my first time speaking on the House floor, was when I stood up for that bill.
That was pretty tough.
I was scared to death, and
Senator Kennedy was there with you.
Yeah, he was standing behind me. I'm like, okay, he's got my back, and I'm holding on to the the desk just to keep from passing out, because I've not been a big public speaker or anything,
Right.
but I
Probably one of the
felt
toughest
strongly.
bill that had been
yeah.
run for a long time.
Yeah,
Right?
but when you feel strongly about something like that, you got to stand up and tackle it. And I do feel like we did it in a as carrying away as we could, trying to realize that some people who have already gone down this road, we had a provision where they could continue, but no new things. Even though personally, I don't think
that was in terms of the hormone.
the hormones and the puberty blockers.
Yeah.
Yep. Surgeries, no, like no more of those. Like we're doing permanent. You cannot go back on surgeries like that. Surgery in general is a big thing to undertake, but especially on someone so young where they really don't understand maybe the future consequences of it.
Yeah, I think the thing that really hit me hard was that Khloe Cole that you brought in and to talk about her experience.
Her story is compelling, and unfortunately there's more and more stories like hers that are coming out. So I think we've done the right thing. I think we're doing the right thing. There's still probably a few things that need to be addressed. And as that CAST study came out, I watched the Health and Human Services interim meeting last week. I highly recommend it for anyone that really wants to dive deep and understand what's been going on the past few years in that.
Now you mentioned Equality Utah. Inside politics, people certainly know who they are, but some people don't. What was the motivation to work with them, and why do you think they kind of came on board in a way? You know what I mean? Sort
of in a way they came on board, and I think that's one thing that we do need a little more of, even though, because in the meeting that we had with them, we kind of all expressed our concerns over what's going on, and I just said my concern is for these kids. Like, these are young kids that may or may not be ready to do these things, may or may not have the knowledge, may or may not change their minds later. Like, my concern is for their health and well-being. And I think if we can all look at that as a commonality that we should all share, even if your agenda is different, even if you think that transgenderism is the way to go for anyone that has that kind of a feeling, I think health and well-being is a commonality that we can all stand behind. Like, the science of it and what hormones can do to a person's body and to a healthy body, to be honest. I mean, when we're taking out healthy body parts and healthy bodies and leading them down a lifetime of having to stay on drugs or and drugs meaning hormones, but those are not natural drugs for their body type, right? And it's lifelong. You have to stay on that for life, or else you start to kind of revert. We don't even know the long-term consequences of those. And so, especially when starting so young. Now, again, as I've said, if you're older and that's where you choose, have at it, and we can be sympathetic and have conversations about what that looks like, as far as like with Kara's bill this last session with the bathroom spaces and stuff, which I felt was very compassionate as well, because she was trying to create a space for people who feel this way, and also create a safe space for women and girls who do not want someone with a penis in their bathroom.
Right.
I mean, and so we can come to compromises, and I think
that's kind of the Utah way, though.
Right, it kind of is. And I think if you look at legislation over, all states, I feel like ours in all of these spaces have been very collaborative. I don't think the media pushes that, though. I think the media pushes whatever's going to get clicks and activists engaged. And I think, I personally think that's a disservice to these people that we're actually trying to find a way through for these transgender kids that feel displaced, they feel marginalized, and when they see stories and things that are pushed by the media that aren't true, like Utah doesn't care about trans kids and spaces that we had this last week. Honestly, what is that? What good is that doing? You're putting the fear and the hate into these kids when that's not one of us down there is like, we don't care about people. We don't care about kids of any,
Right.
kids that feel this way. We're actually trying to make a space for them.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a frustration for me in all of this.
Well, I think it's a frustration for all of us.
For all
right?
of us, probably, right? And
well, at least on our side of the aisle, right?
Right. Well, and it should be on both sides, because
Right.
I don't think the Democrat side wants those kids to feel bad at either. But some of what's said and perpetuated in the media is fueling that and driving that.
Right.
It's a frustration for sure.
Well, I want to kind of get to this to the Equal Opportunity Act, but we're going to take a break. We'll come right back.
Okay.
Hey Siri, how do I get to the state capitol?
John, the fastest way to get to the Capitol is to make a lot of empty promises, to get help from special interest groups and endorsements from politicians. You will also need to buy a better suit.
That's not going to work for me, Siri. You need to find another way.
John, listen to me. If you're going to win your race, you will need to play the political game. You also need to use more hairspray and buy a golden retriever. Also, a new phone case would be nice.
It's enough of this.
John, are you there? Did you just leave me on the road? Fine. Keep your principles, John.
My name's John Johnson. I'm not running to be part of a system, and I don't owe anyone special favors. I'm running to listen to and work for you. I'm running to get results. Welcome back to PoliticIt. We've got Katy Hall with us, District 11 representative. Thanks, Katy. I mean, before the break, we were talking a little bit about, we were kind of going to shift to the Equal Opportunity Act that you were working on. But, one of the things that we talked about just now, you just got an award from Do No Harm,
Yep.
which is kind of interesting because both of those bills are something that they're really excited about, right?
Yeah, that was nice. It's nice of them.
So Do No Harm actually got started because of a doctor at UPenn, right? Mm-hmm. That was worried about these surgeries and this transitioning of children, right?
Yep.
That's mainly what they were worried about, was that it was kids.
Yep. And that's all that they're worried about, is that it's on kids. They fully have the same kind of thing I do, where, if you're an adult and your brain is developed and you choose to do that, that's on you. But it's also maybe not the best healthcare decisions, but at the same time, that's your choice.
Yeah.
For young kids. Yeah.
That's something that we have to be concerned about.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Equal Opportunity Act. I know, having had many conversations with you about this, I think that I really like the way that, we both tried the year before, right?
Right.
But I think there were a lot of discussions that needed to take place.
Yeah.
We learned, right, that there were a lot of good things that had happened because of these efforts, right?
Yeah.
And so, going back to those times, what were some of the things that really hit you as you looked at all the different groups that had something to do with this?
So when last year when I can't remember the name of the bill that we tried to get passed with just commitment statements. That was the one I was trying to get passed. Right after the session, or at the end of the session.
And I was trying to get rid of everything.
Yeah, and you were trying to do everything. So it was like, mine was like just a little, and yours was like all. And when they failed, it was kind of a, people started reaching out from the universities, honestly, from several of the universities across the Wasatch Front. They emailed me and said, "You're on the right track. Please don't let this go. There's things happening in the universities that we're seeing that we don't feel like we can push back on without some legislative help." And so I started having some conversations with those people. And then at the same time, Path Forward Utah reached out,
Right.
who are kind of conservative minorities that have kind of come together that just want, they want grassroots organic ways to address disparities, right? And in a conservative way.
Right.
And they felt like DEI was doing harm in that way. So both of those groups kind of, as we were having discussions over last summer and all the meetings and things, we went to some of the same things
Right.
with Robert Woodson.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And
He really, I think he really inspired
yes.
people who hadn't really thought about
I
this,
think
right?
so
Don't you
too.
think so?
I totally think so. And I was kind of disheartened to see that there wasn't a lot of people there, and we needed more people to come
That was
to
at
some
that
of
Weber
those
State
meetings
event, right?
at Utah State. Yeah. Well, Weber State and Utah State.
Yeah.
He did another one down at Utah State, and I was like, where are the people? They need to hear this message. They need to
Right.
hear what he's saying. And anyway, so with that group, and then also with the university professors, I kind of finally was able to not convince, but kind of, I just said, as I'm working on this legislation, I want to make sure we're not going too far, and kind of get your guys' perspective on what you're seeing. Right. And so as we had a meeting with them, it was super interesting to hear their stories. And these were classic liberals. They were telling us, they were like, listen, I'm a Democrat, I'm a liberal, always have been. But what's happening now is not viewpoint diversity. It's not what I signed up for when I wanted to be a professor. I want people to hear all sides and make their own decisions of what's happening.
Well, and the other thing I thought was interesting was that they kind of had this opinion that it was getting harder and harder to talk about the things they actually had to be talking about.
Right. And just some of the cramming down of what the next step was, and they would be like, wait, that seems a little too far, and then if they questioned it at all, they were getting attacked and they were getting censured, and they were like, wait, what is going on? What is happening?
Because it's really hurting the academy, right? This is that heterodox group.
Yes,
right?
yes. And more than that, they were concerned for their students. Let me put that very clearly. They were concerned for what they were seeing with students there. They're like, our students are saying they don't have to hear this because the DEI office says they don't have to. They need to be protected from hearing things that are not safe for them, and all these things. And they're like, these kids are not growing. There was one dance professor that said there's a dance term called kitsch, and it's when you're not progressing, you're not getting any better, you're not getting any worse, you're just kind of stuck right there. And he says, I feel like the students nowadays are in this intellectual kitsch, this educational kitsch, where they're not going forward or backwards, and maybe they are kind of going backwards, but there's no progression, there's no like moving on and growing. And so as we had those discussions with them, we were kind of, they also were like, we believe in social justice. We believe that there has been harms that have caused disparities, but we just feel like what's going on now has tried to push things way too far, and it's gone way off track. And so,
because it's become, it really became more of a political ideology than it was classical liberal thought, right?
Right. It just became all about the politics of it and pushing forward certain ideologies instead of like putting things out there. I mean, we've talked about like CRT and other things before, all these theories that are taught in higher ed. And I think you and I are on the same page of like, you can teach those, but you should also be teaching the other theories too.
Right.
And what was happening, I think, is that DEI offices are maybe putting those theories into play that are just theories. There's nothing proven about that this is going to help or work or do anything to improve circumstances for people. But we're putting that in play.
Yeah, it's like comparing the Marxian notion that these movements really are about social change, rather than say, John Stuart Mill, thinking that, if you don't understand both sides of an argument, you really don't understand the argument,
right? You can't. How can you see both sides if you're only seeing one side?
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of this heterodox movement came out of Jonathan Haidt, right? And of course we know Jonathan from the Coddling of the American Mind book, right? But the talk he gave at Duke University was really interesting, and he kind of laid out this dichotomy and was saying, look, what we really need to do is teach kids to think critically.
Right. And give them both sides. And that's the biggest thing I think that these professors were just asking for is we need viewpoint diversity. We need to be able to bring in speakers that people don't like and still be able to bring them in and not have them shouted down
and have a discussion
pushed off and have a discussion about it. It does no good to just, I'm sorry, it does no good to yell and scream. Like I get emails, I've gotten my fair share of emails about people who are not happy with this and also some who are happy with it. And I will totally answer the ones that are actually emailing me saying, listen, this is what I've experienced and I'm worried that this is going to harm this. I will have a conversation with them any day of the week because I believe in this legislation. I believe that this legislation actually helps discrimination issues that are happening across the board, right? If discrimination is wrong, period.
Right.
Among any group. I don't think any group should be discriminated against. Now, are you going to stop discrimination? Are you going to stop people from being discriminatory? No. But we can stop state institutions from having discriminatory policies against anyone or for anyone, for that matter.
Well, and I think one of the things you discovered when you were talking to the different groups is there were things happening on campuses because of these efforts, like helping kids from first generation college students, right? Yeah. Kids that didn't have parents that went to school.
Right.
Or helping kids from poverty areas, right? And there were some positive things that were happening that you tried very hard to retain.
Yeah, and we're still trying to protect those. We ask for student success offices that will still help any student that is having struggles with, being a first generation student or their low socioeconomic status. Anything that they were probably getting help with already through some of these offices, as far as financial or educational assistance, they'll still be able to get that in the student success offices. It's helping everyone and treating them as an individual, not based on some group that they belong to.
Well, and I think that was one of the things that was happening is we were having segregated graduation ceremonies, right?
Yes.
Which seems, when you think about the whole civil rights movement, it seems like, what the heck?
Yeah. Well, it feels like there was rebranded as affinity celebrations, right? Which I'm all for that. If you want to have a celebration with a group of people that you identify with, that's great. It just can't be state-sponsored, state-funded, paid for by the schools. Yeah. Right? People do that all the time. They have graduation celebrations for religious groups or whatever groups. Have that all the time. It's just like the state cannot discriminate. The state cannot segregate.
Well, and one of the things that was going on at that same time is we had a Supreme Court decision, the Harvard case, right? North Carolina was involved in that.
Things,
and so that started changing the narrative. And the Supreme Court basically said, hey, if we're going to stop discrimination, we got to stop discrimination, right?
Yep.
And it's so, and then we had these, we've had these riots all across the country at the universities, to
pro-Palestine.
And when you think about those things, it basically goes back to this narrative of the oppressed versus the oppressor, rather than having a discussion about right and wrong.
Right. Yeah.
So what would you say, we're about out of time, but what would you say what do you believe the key takeaways from this legislation, and how do you think it's helping things, and what could we better do to bring people together?
I think the key takeaways of HB 261, the Equal Opportunity Initiatives, is right there in the title, like providing equal opportunities for everyone. The opportunities are out there. And then a big piece of the legislation is anti-discrimination. It's about not discriminating for or against anyone, right? Not trying to use discrimination to solve past problems of discrimination or even current problems of discrimination. You're not going to solve discrimination with discrimination. So for me, those are the big takeaways. Now, going forward, I think that we need to give these student success centers a chance. We need to give, and yes, we called for it in PoliticIt and in government offices too. We need to give that a chance of let's leave it. Let's get to our communities to educate people on this, right? Because I don't think government solves these problems. Government doesn't solve these problems. Our communities solve these problems. Government just says, we're not going to discriminate. We're going to get out of the way. And our communities, we've got to get back to more community things. And I know COVID was like a big, people are just shut in their homes and kind of have gotten
withdrawn
used to, we've withdrawn. And we got to get back out. That's why I love groups that are doing that. The For One and All, the group that is doing that community event in a few weeks in downtown Ogden. They are grassroots kids from the inner city that are like, we want to educate the youth of today that they need to stay away from drugs, that there's better opportunities out there. I've actually gotten Weber State and Ogden Weber Tech to come, and they're going to do some tables at that event to like show some education of what they can offer people to get out of poverty, to build a future for them. And it's the perfect place to do it because families will be there. You get parent buy-in. We need more events like that, and we need more education. That's what I would say. It's, just education about what the law is and what the bill does, and working together
instead of against each
and
other.
Having conversations instead of yelling and screaming. In the end, and maybe I'm too kumbaya, but I really do believe that the majority of people feel the same way about a lot of these issues. It's just the path that we think we should take to get there is different.
Yeah.
We want everyone to have the same opportunities, but that has to be an individual choice too. So
yeah, just as the pendulum swung too far in one direction, we want to make sure this correction doesn't swing too far in
the other. We've got to come together to get America back. Yeah. I really do think we need to.
Well, thank you. We're out of time, but thank you, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.